Hello everybody and welcome to the Football Daily Podcast, UKEndZone's football podcast, where we talk about football each and every day with me, Ollie Conley. And joining me today is the real boss man. This guy is the hidden gem of UKEndZone.com. He does all the real work and then I get the nice tweets and emails. So I like what he does in his role with UKEndZone.com. It's our boss man and our editor-in-chief, David Bossley. David, how's it going?
It's going well, man. Thanks very much for the intro. I think you might be giving me a bit too much love there, but I'll take it.
And one thing we always like to do as a site is look doom and gloom. When you're employing people like Neil Dutton, who's just a gloomy guy, then we look at the doom and gloom. So I thought when I got you on for the first time, the thing we have to leap to, which is becoming a podcast tradition, is look at who could get fired.
Always a good way to start.
Always a good way to start. And there's a great raft of candidates who could get fired from the NFL this year. None more so than Jason Garrett. I've pulled up the odds for this. I went on Bavoda? I don't know how you pronounce it, but I pulled up the odds for this, and I knew straight away Garrett would be in there. But he's at 2-1 to be the first coach fired. That's just like money in the bank. The guy's going to go before Christmas.
That's less than all. Right there.
No doubt about it. Do you think he's going to go? How soon do you think he's going to go?
Add the 6 games.
6 games?
I don't think he'll get past 6 games. Not sure exactly how quick it'll be, but that Cowboys team is going to be absolutely atrocious, and they've been waiting to blame him for it for a long time. I don't think he gets past week 6.
I mean, they keep shooting themselves in the foot. Jerry Jones has the Jason Garrett obsession that we all know about. He probably should have been gone already, and now they have like 3 offensive coordinators. We don't know who's calling the plays. I'm all in the camp of just letting Tony Romo do it. I would just let him go out there and let him call the plays.
Well, he's definitely got the talent enough to be able to go and do it and make something happen. I'm definitely not as high on him as a lot of people are. I'm not what you would call a hater either. I'm not saying that he's the reason they lose any game at all, but I don't know if I would trust him to be my quarterback, let alone my coach.
And I don't even know if the Cowboy job is as desirable. I know it's not as desirable as it once was. Would you want to work for Jerry Jones?
Well, I would rather work for Jerry Jones than work where I actually work. But if I was an actual NFL head coaching prospect and I knew I was probably getting 1, maybe 2 chances at this, if I'm lucky, that's definitely not where I want to start out.
Because the sort of jobs that are going to come open, and we'll get to, you've probably got the whole AFC East. They'll probably come open, maybe not Rex, but the other ones may come open. I can't think if there's any other job offer on the table why you would take the Cowboy job.
I would have to agree with that. Unless you're that confident in your abilities that you can be the guy to make them relevant again. Mm-hmm. It would be pretty. Whoever the guy is who eventually does make the Cowboys relevant again, he's definitely going to go down in history.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's a good point. That the high is higher than any other job, but the low is so low. It's a coach killing job as well, where things come out so openly because they're so covered, and you're just going to have infights with Jerry Jones all the time. It's going to kill your chance at a second job if it doesn't go well.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Is if anyone was actually looking to take that job, the number one thing that you have to know going in is what your job actually is. You need to know if you're calling the plays. You need to know who's in charge of what. And I don't really know if there's a prospect who's a big enough character to go toe-to-toe with Jerry Jones and win that argument.
I agree with you. Someone's got to come into the Cowboys who's just a monstrous personality, like when they had a Jimmy Johnson, someone who's so big in his own right that he can say things and just put them into action whether Jerry Jones likes or not because he can get away with it. And I just don't think there's anyone out there right now, even in a job in the NFL, unless people you like Jim Harbaugh, who is a big enough personality regardless of guys who are available, just guys who could do that in this day and age.
2 guys, if I were to try and pick someone to go in and take that job and actually be able to do it effectively, particularly the arguing with Jerry Jones side of things, 2 guys I could see it happening with, and that would be the return of Rob Ryan to Dallas.
Oh, how good would that be?
And the other one is his twin brother. If Rick's were to get the axe at some point, I reckon he's a big enough personality to go in there and maybe do a job.
I agree. They're good. They're good calls. The only real one is John Gruden, and the two of them don't get along anyway, so it would never happen. But they're probably the only guys. I like the call of Rob Ryan. I think Jerry could spin that as well. Let's look at Oakland then. That job's 4-1 to come open. I think Dennis Allen's definitely gone, regardless of the season, just because they're going to go and try and get a bigger personality to start marketing that franchise more.
Yeah,
do you think he's gone?
He's number 2 on my list as well. A lot of the same reasons as the Cowboys. The fact is that the Raiders just haven't been relevant for so long. It's a lot like the Cowboys job. They need someone who is a big enough character to be able to take the fact that he's going to have the pressure. They're not an under the radar team. Everyone's watching to see when the Raiders are going to be relevant again, and no one's going to get 5-6 years to give it a go. If you're not successful straight away, you're not going to get much of a chance.
I think the issue with the two franchises, which is why they're going to be looking for new head coaches, is in that constant pursuit to be relevant. You then overspend on free agents you shouldn't be signing, on guys who are older, just to try and maintain relevancy and think that you can win in the short term, when in reality, if they just cut it back like the Raiders did 2 years ago, after they had all the stupid moves with the Carson Palmer trade and stuff, and they said, let's just detonate this thing and blow it up, and you just go and get some young and exciting players and build from the ground up. And then again, the Raiders did it again. They went outside Maurice Jones-Drew, they traded for Matt Schaub, they just raided themselves all over again.
Yeah, I cannot believe the off-season they've had, and I know get hate for hating on Raiders, but they actually had a really encouraging year last year. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of excitement out at Terrell Pryor. They managed to cover for the fact that they had no draft picks and no cap space, and they had a couple of proper homegrown talents who looked like they were actually going to come in and do a job, and then they just farmed them out for apparently no reason whatsoever. Decided they would rather have the team of 2008.
And I'm stunned at how excited and how upbeat writers are about the Raiders. They think this team's going to be good because they're living in the past. Maurice Jones-Drew is done. If Jacksonville's letting you go and you're Maurice Jones-Drew, you're done.
And it says an awful lot that of all the people they have signed, he's probably the one I had the highest hope for. I mean, he's definitely not the same guy that he was, but all the early reports are saying that he looks like he's in better shape than he has been for the last couple of years since his injury. He was the leading rusher this season before he went out, and he was the highest ranked running back in pass protection. So if you've got a disaster like Matt Schaub, then you really need to keep him protected. I could see why he's essentially the one signing that I can think of off the top of my head where I can see why it might be worth the risk for the potential upside. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's definitely not the guy he was, and as I say, he's my headline of that class, so it doesn't say much for the rest of the guys.
I kind of like Matt Schaub in that fit. I really do. It was only really last year he imploded, and before that he was pretty damn good. I know he's got talent around him and stuff, and the system was perfect for him. But I mean, if they can install him in the right offense, he might be able to do some things still. Do you think there's any hope for him saving his job? Would he have to go above 500?
Dennis Allen would definitely have to go above 500 to save his job. I reckon he's another one who's already penciled in to be fired, but it's more of a we'll do this mid-season kind of thing rather than giving a guy the whole off-season. It adds an extra half a year on to whoever the successor is. He gets an extra half a year before the pressure's on him. Like, I know that I would definitely rather be a guy taking over a team mid-season than getting handed the reins in the off-season then just told to go and do it. You tend to see a lot of success from it if someone takes over on an interim basis, or if they're genuinely just hired in the middle of the season. It's really easy to come in. Everyone's energized because you've got rid of whoever they've decided the scapegoat is. Maybe they actually were to blame, who knows? But everyone's excited, everyone's re-energized, you get more out of the guy straight off the bat, and essentially you can't do any worse than they were doing. If you do badly, then everyone was expecting it anyway, and you've still got your next year guaranteed. If you do well, then you're laughing.
And I think these organizations come to a weird crossroads. They look at Tampa Bay last year, and you make the case that they should have fired Schiano mid-season. Most of these teams should do, but then you get yourself in a situation like, if he's really bad and the morale is so low, we're going to end up with a decent draft pick in a tanking sort of way, and that'll help us kick start when we get the new guy. Whereas if we do revitalize ourselves and we get to like 7 and 9 because we revitalize ourselves, where does that really help us going forward? It's never good to be mediocre in the NFL.
Well, it's never good to be mediocre, but if you look at the teams that are always relevant, I can't imagine, for example, a Steelers team deciding to tank for a high draft pick because they're always going to be competitive, whether they're good or they're bad. Last year's the prime example. They go 0-4 straight out the gate, and the number one knock that everyone's had on them is that they're old and slow. It would have been really easy for them to get down, and now think that there's a lot of talented stars coming out. We could really totally re-energize our team, but no, they got back to 8-8, and yeah, they didn't do anything else, but I respect the fact that they go out and compete for the full season. It's one of the reasons why they are just always in the mix, regardless of whether they make the playoffs or not.
No doubt about it. This next guy, I cannot believe he's still in his job. This is Joe Philbin. He's 7-1 to be gone. That's money in the bank as well. I don't understand how this guy was kept around. Not even just the bullying thing, but his explanation to the bullying thing, plus the fact he can't coach. I mean, to just come out and flat out say when there's 3 or 4 things happening, you've got no idea. That's a sackable offence in itself. It's not that you say you didn't know, but how did you not know anything about anything? He seems to know nothing about nothing, and he can't coach. I know that for a fact. I watched him, he can't coach, so I don't know how he still has a job.
Well, as far as X's and O's go, you're definitely a man I would trust with regard to that. I can't really speak on it myself, so if the man can't coach, I believe you. I 100% agree, though, with regard to the bullying and everything else that's going on with that organisation. To be honest, I hope he keeps his job, just because as long as the Dolphins are poor, that makes it better for the Jets. But yeah, he has to go, and I genuinely think the only reason he still has a job just now is because they couldn't just fire everyone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they really should have done. Like, the NFL should have almost enforced it, really, with what went on in that report. An issue for Philbin as well is it's never a good sign when a new general manager comes in. That's never nice. And the new GMs come in, so he's going to want his own guy, so he's definitely going to be gone. Mid-season's so tough because the candidates you want to interview and stuff are usually performing on decent teams, so they want to interview. The guys out of college won't leave college mid-season. I don't even think they're allowed to anymore to go and interview. So it's a real tough situation for teams like the Dolphins, who, in the AFC East and in the AFC, if you were at like 2-2 and you just weren't happy with Philbin and you started to add things up via Stephen Ross, the owner, if they made a decision then and it worked, they could find themselves in the playoffs. They got talent.
They absolutely could, but the flip side of that is the fact that the Dolphins do have talent. Joe Philbin is the first guy on this list who I could realistically see an opportunity for him to actually keep his job. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he deserves to. I'm not saying that if they succeed that it will be down to him. But with all of the negative press they've had, whether it would be a good thing now to fire Joe Philbin is one thing, but having to fire now a prominent member of staff is always going to be seen as negative in some regard. So if the Dolphin team comes out the gate and they are performing well, if they finish with a season like a 10-6 and they make the playoffs, I would say that there's a good chance he actually does keep his job.
We didn't talk about the Raiders. I mean, it's definitely going to be one of the Ryans is going to be in there, right? There's no way it's not a Ryan.
For the Raiders?
Yeah, for the Raiders. They're going to employ a Ryan.
Well, I definitely think that, assuming he doesn't do anything stupid this year, that Rob Ryan has finally earned his chance to get a job like that. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling to think of anyone who is, as we talked about, a big enough personality to go into a team with a history like that, who is right on the cusp of a job there. All the guys that we've been talking about for the last couple of years have either had their chance and they've blown it, or they've totally burned out. Mm-hmm. The likes of Schottenheimer, who was always picked to be a head coach at some point, he seems to have just faded away into nothing now. So it's Rob Ryan would be the top shout.
The thing I have with these organisations, when they've been so irrelevant now for such length of time, why don't they go and hand the reins to a guy and give him total control of the organisation? Why do they always bring in a guy and it's like he's basically just a coordinator masquerading as a head coach, and all the decisions are made above his head usually? Why don't they look within their division, like the Dolphins, and say, hey, the Patriots seem to know how to do this thing year in, year out. The guy makes the decisions, gets to coach the players. I never understand that.
Well, I agree that if you can get a guy who can do that, then it is the way to go. But if you really look at the league top to bottom, even among the high-performing head coaches, there's not many who do have full management control of their team. It seems to be a dying thing, whether you're doing well or you're doing poorly. And like, with the exception of Belichick, you can point at Pete Carroll. He seems to have a great setup with the front office in Seattle, and he seems to be heavily involved with who's coming through the building. But outside of that, there aren't many guys who you would really be able to attribute their draft picks and their signings are all going through the coaches' room. There does seem to be a proper divide between the coaching staff and the front office staff, and that's in the good teams and the bad teams.
Very bizarre setup. It really is. They've tried to change a little bit in basketball. Now in the NBA, they're employing more guys to have full control. It just makes sense. It makes great sense to do it. It's bizarre to me. The next guy on the list is Doug Marrone, and he's 8-1. And this kind of shocks me because they just drafted a quarterback, so that always instantly gives you time. And we still don't know what we're going to have in EJ by the end of the year. They trade up to get Sammy Watkins, so they're identifying the draft as the way they want to build. The only way I can see that he goes is because they got new ownership in, and they want a big name.
Well, I hadn't actually considered the ownership. That's a good point. Doug Marrone, I definitely see why he's up there. They've not, for me, had a particularly good off season. EJ Manuel and Doug Marrone are going to be tied together, I think, in terms of if one's successful, the other one will be too. I'm not ready to crucify the guy just yet, but the things we've heard haven't been encouraging. I don't like the move by the team to go and get Sammy Watkins. I think it was way too costly for what they did. I know I'm in minority there. We have talked about it briefly before, but I just don't see what's particularly special about Sammy Watkins.
Oh, did you see the video that was out today?
I did actually, yes.
Yeah, you'd saying that isn't special?
Well, I'm saying that anyone can look fantastic on the right day, but I think that Marquise Lee, I still think he was a better all-round wide receiver prospect. I think the Jaguars have got the absolute steal.
You need to get off this Marquise Lee thing. You've been banging my head about Marquise Lee for like 18 months. The guy is good, averagely good at everything, which is great. He's going to be a decent receiver. Sammy Watkins is special.
Is he, though?
Yes.
Smarter minds than me have told me that he is, and I guess at some point I need to accept that he is, but I genuinely think that Marquise Lee will be far and away the better pro receiver.
Okay, we can have a fiver on that. Sammy Watkins is going to torch this Jets defense this year, and I'm so excited to text you when I'm watching it happen. It's going to be fun.
Sammy Watkins can't torch the Jets defense if EJ Manuel can't get him the ball.
EJ won't be playing. EJ will be injured. I genuinely believe half the time he isn't that injured. I think it's a major concern for the Bills that he's one of these guys who gets a lot of these little nagging injuries and makes them into a big deal and won't take the field. Everyone is playing hurt. I think EJ needs to get that into his head that you have to sometimes just go through it. If your elbow's hurting a bit, you just got to go out there and go through it.
I think that's fair.
How about Rex Ryan then? Tell me about your guy.
Well, Rex Ryan, this is the first time my list is actually deviating from yours. I've got one ahead of Rex Ryan before, but we'll come to him in a wee minute.
I'm not making the list. The automaker Vegas is telling me who's going to get fired.
Oh no, I'm not saying you're making the list. I'm just saying I've been with the numbers up until this point. Rex definitely does not deserve to get fired. I think last year proves it. You absolutely cannot say a single thing wrong with what he did in his first two seasons. He was exactly what the organisation needed after a long, long period of disappointment. He's gotten the best out of what was an ageing but talented team in his first year. He got the best again out of what was a totally revamped team in his second year. The third year was fairly poor, and he's had a total bounce back, and he's proved that when he's given now a little bit of rope, that he can coach to save his job, which is the kind of guy that you want in a pressure situation like New York. You need someone who can rise to the occasion, and he's absolutely done that. I would say that it would have been fair if he was fired after this third year. You wouldn't have had a lot of complaints about it, but I think last year's earned him a couple of years of grace. I don't think there's a better defensive mind in the league at the moment, and I think he's starting to get a little bit of his swagger back, which I love to see.
Dick LeBeau might have something to say about the defensive mind thing, but he's up there. I want to go on record. I think Rex Ryan is a great coach. There's not many guys in the league that I would take if I had my own team with all the coaches available. There's a handful of guys I would take before I take Rex, because you get everything that comes with it. You get the fact he's one of the best motivators in the sport, if not the best right now, particularly with his defense. And you just get a guy who's the complete aura of a franchise. He is the New York Jets. And that's what I love about him. I think that's what Woody Johnson loves about him as well. So I'm kind of shocked that Vegas even has odds on him to get fired, because he should definitely be, barring a 3-13 Geno implode Michael Vick scandal season, he's not going to get fired.
I don't think he is. As I say, I think he's earned himself a couple of years of grace. There's definitely a lot of pitfalls with that team. You never really know exactly what's gonna happen on any given Sunday, as they say. But I reckon he's fairly safe.
And he has the curveball as well, and that Woody Johnson is known for just wanting to make the back pages of the paper, or the front pages, should I say. So, and Rex delivers that more than if he just went and got like a good-minded X's and O's coach.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also the fact that he was in that situation that you've talked about. It's never a good sign when you've got a new GM coming in the door.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people thought that was spelling the end for him when he was put in that situation as well. But with everything that's been said about Idzik, he could make up his mind that he wants to fire Rex today. He wouldn't actually go through with it till about 2017.
I also think that Rex has the ear of Woody Johnson more than John Idzik does. I think Rex has more power than Idzik.
It was definitely up in the air last year, but I would tend to agree.
If he went to Woody Johnson was like, can't stand this guy, I need to get rid of him, I think he'd do it more than the other way around. I think Woody makes the call on the coach.
And as you say, he's a proper players coach, which is exactly the way the league is going just now.
Mm-hmm.
Players want to play for these guys, and they're always going to get the best out of them.
Yeah, copycat league. They're all trying to find a Pete Carroll now. Gus Bradley. Then this is another name that I was a bit like, I don't know if this should be on the list. They're in a full scale rebuild. They're in the next year of that. They just drafted a quarterback. Even if it's horrendous, you just put it down to being, we had a rookie quarterback. So I don't know why they would. They're trending upwards. So I don't know why you'd fire a guy if you're trending upwards.
Gus Bradley is not on my top 10 list. I have no idea where that's coming from.
And it's 12-1, which is short odds for a guy who's, like I said, trending upwards.
What are the odds on Gus Bradley?
12-1, and there's lots of names I could think of that are on this list that I'd rather take those bets than a 12-1 Gus Bradley bet.
I think the Jaguars are in for a good year finally.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of towards the end of last year, I made my bold prediction for the 2014 season would be that the Jaguars would outperform the Kansas City Chiefs. Everything I've seen since then supports that. I think they've absolutely nailed the draft. The defense is looking good. I think Gus Bradley is more than safe. I think the Jaguars will be contending for a wild card spot this year.
I like it. I like the confidence in these London Jaguars. I like it a lot. How about Mike Smith then? This is a guy who I think he should be in that top 3 discussion. Not that I don't like him. I just think it's time for him and the organization to move in a different direction.
Mike Smith, I've got him tied exactly the same way as I do with another guy who I'm fairly sure will be on the list as well, in Marvin Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I think that both of them, the discussion would be that, yeah, they clearly can coach a successful team, but the ceiling is very apparent, and it's just a question of whether or not they want to take the risk, or if it's better the devil you know. Do we want to continue to have a successful regular season and then just burn out? I don't. If I'm in charge of a team, if I'm in ownership, then I don't know if I can take that risk. But certainly from sort of a fan perspective, the pressure they put on them, every team's trying to win the Super Bowl, and I think both of them have proved they can coach a successful team, but that they might not be able to go any farther than they've already demonstrated. I think both of their career paths are probably heading the same way as Gary Kubiak did in Houston.
I have the same issue with both guys, is that I just feel like the organization, like you said, is numb to winning deep in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the Bengals, let's just talk about Marvin Lewis for a second then. He's never won in the playoffs in 12 years. To me, the Marvin Lewis situation seems just like money. Like, Brown doesn't want to pay any more money to get another coach. They had a head coach there. The defensive coordinator, Zimmer, was a head coach. They should have just promoted him.
I'm not saying Zimmer wasn't a head coach. I'm very excited to see what he does this year, but I think it's a difficult one. It's like, if you're firing Marvin Lewis, what exactly are you firing him for? Are you comfortable coming out and saying we're firing him for being successful but not successful enough?
Because he's never won in the playoffs. That's why we're firing him. We're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Well, there's plenty of coaches who never won a playoff game because they never got there.
He's been there now for many times. He's been there many times and never got over the line of even winning one game. At least Mike Smith has won games in the playoffs.
Well, that's true. That's true. But as I say, those guys, they're very similar for me in terms of what's going to happen. I think Mike Smith may be on a little bit more of a hot seat because of the particularly bad year last year, but I don't really see that happening again. Mike Smith, I think that the Falcons would need to, if they if they were to win fewer than 5 games this year, I could see him getting fired. If they win more than 5 games, I think he's safe.
Yeah, I think they're both safe. I just don't think the organizations have the balls to move on from either of them. How about Ron Rivera then? This name makes listen. This has been on. If you go to like the Bleach reports and stuff, and they have like these Watch 5 lists and stuff of things to look out for, the storylines. A lot of people are discussing Ron Rivera getting fired. Is this because they just got on a hot streak last year and he rolled it and he became Riverboat Ron, and they've dropped off massively in talent levels at different positions? People keep talking about the wide receivers. They didn't drop off too much. That's overblown. But why is Ron Rivera on such a hot seat for a guy who just had a great year?
But the fact is just the situation for Ron Rivera hasn't changed at all since he first got on the hot seat. His whole success or failure is totally tied to Cam Newton. There's an overblown story about the wide receiver situation, but the wide receiver situation wasn't brilliant to start with. You're absolutely right. The fact is that he's still playing week to week. He's on my list for that reason. He did have a fantastic end to the season off the back of some pretty dominant defensive displays with a few moments of controversy thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Panthers struggle, then he's definitely not done enough to keep his job with a struggling team. He's sort of like a pay-as-you-go head coach. Like once his credit runs out, he's not going to get it topped back up again. But every win's going to keep him safe for another week.
I love that term. We got to trademark that for UKEndZone. Yeah, if they go 4-12, which is likely, could happen, then yeah, he's probably gone, no doubt. And that's going to be the most wanted. I mean, if all these jobs come open, the one job that you want is that Panthers job. You get that defense; they're all locked in for some time, especially Kuechly, and you get Cam Newton. You have to roll and get Cam Newton. And John Gruden's discussed before, the only way he would come back would be to get one of these read option quarterbacks, and he would never huddle. And he is obsessed with Cam Newton. He loves the guy. So there's a chance if the Panthers want to dole out the money, they could be the guys that get John Gruden back.
We're going to talk about it every year until he eventually does come back. But I agree, it's a absolutely perfect situation to come in, especially off the back of a bad year. There's a lot of talent that's going to be coming in. If you've got control over who you use that high draft pick on, you've already got your quarterback situation sorted, and you've got a defense that's as talented as most of the groups in the league. Then no, absolutely, it's an ideal situation for a first-year head coach to come in, and an even better situation for a returning veteran.
The next one I find blasphemous. I'm Vegas. I'm annoyed with. Tom Coughlin should be on should be fired list. He's done too much to even consider being fired. The guy will walk away at the end of the year. We all know it. He shouldn't even be entertained in any firing discussion.
Tom Coughlin, I did have him earmarked to talk about when I said that Rex Ryan was the first time he deviated from the list. I had Tom Coughlin as the fifth most likely.
Really?
To not see out the year, but I had to clarify with you exactly what we meant by being fired.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, if they struggle, if they're a bad team, then he's 99% gone, but I don't think it will come out as a firing. I think he will be walking away. I do think there's a good chance he walks away even if they're successful. But if the Giants are terrible this year and Tom Coughlin doesn't see out the year or he walks away at the end of the year, I think, to all intents and purposes, that's a firing, even if it's done with good graces of everyone in the city and the organisation. So while I wouldn't say that he's likely to be fired, I do think he's in the top 5 most likely coaches not to return to their job next season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that assessment. I think he's in the top 1. I don't think he's coming back at all. It's different if he resigns and then seeks another job, or if he retires. And I think it's going to be the retiring one. So I would see that differently than firing. If it's a resignation, it's because they say, look, Tom, we want to move on, so will you walk away?
So Tom Coughlin retires this year. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Yeah, no doubt. No kidding. With Eli Manning as his quarterback? No kidding, man. This is the first year. This is a big test for the Giants. This is the first year they can favourably get out of an Eli Manning contract. Do you think they could move away from both Eli and Tom?
I think if they move away from Eli Manning, there'll be at least 10 teams in the league ready to snap him up the very next day. And I think he's definitely still got a lot left in him. Maybe a new start's exactly what he needs.
He's going to be an Oakland Raider, is what you're telling us.
I wouldn't mind him at the Jets, I'll tell you that much right now. From what we've had to suffer through, I definitely wouldn't mind having Eli Manning.
Don't sleep on Geno Smith. But the kid's going to be good. Geno Smith's going to be really good.
I wish him well. I wish him all the best. I'm it's the one part of the Jets that I'm not convinced. I think they could have handled the whole situation very, very, very differently.
It's funny, the two guys that I've gone to bat for more than anyone as they come through college are Tim Tebow and Geno Smith, and they both seem to find their way with their destinies to your New York Jets.
Well, I'll tell you this much: if Geno does end up moving on from the Jets early on in his career, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up a Patriot in some capacity either.
And then he's going to become a future Hall of Famer, is what's going to happen with him. Jeff Fisher, he doesn't get enough. I'm not going to say abuse. Abuse is completely the wrong word, but he doesn't get enough criticism for how poorly he coaches often and decisions he makes. To not move on from Sam Bradford at this juncture, after having multiple opportunities to do it, passing up RG3, not using a first-round draft pick to go get another quarterback, I think that's just a ridiculous decision. And I can't believe he doesn't get more criticism for that decision.
There's one reason he doesn't get the criticism, and it's because he's a total traditionalist, and he has the image of being a total traditionalist. He's totally straight-laced. He's on the competition commission. He speaks well in front of the camera. He's obviously a good X and O's coach. I think he's terrified of the new wave of the NFL.
Hurry up! I'm
And
hurrying nothing up.
it's just that's exactly it. He's one of the elder statesmen of sort of the NFL coaching situation. He's totally respected, and so no one's going to call him on it.
So annoying.
But I think the only reason he's not moved on from Sam Bradford is because he is a traditional pocket passing quarterback. I think if he had a prototype quarterback mold instead of an RG3 to go for, then he would have done it. If Andrew Luck was in play, I think he would have absolutely moved on from Sam Bradford. But for RG3, he just wouldn't do it.
They should have took that offer from Washington for that pick and then offered it plus more to Indianapolis. Imagine that. They offer those, 5-6 round draft picks that will give you Sam Bradford as well, so you have your quarterback. And can we get Andrew Luck? That could have worked.
That would have been. Well, I think that's a perfect situation for an NFL there, right there.
I'm going to throw it to Damashek tonight. I just thought about it in my head. For me, I think that he is a classic situation of being friends with writers and playing the media so perfectly. Remember how he screwed over Vince Young so terribly and never got any criticism for it. Barely any criticism. And because he lets guys come in his draft war room and because he's great friends with some of the big name writers, people are just, like you said, almost afraid to call him on stuff. He's been bad. He's been flat out bad in St. Louis. Decisions they've made have been bad. They fall into having talented players.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I mean. He is fantastic in front of a camera. He's fantastic in an interview. There's no doubt that he can certainly talk the talk. So it's so hard for anyone to call him on anything like that, except when you take a step back and see the results. And it's one of those ones you have to do a double take. You're like, well, but he did everything that we thought was right at the time. How has it failed so badly? And he's too convincing, is what he is.
Yeah. The next name, we got two more before we wrap it up. Mark Trestman. I find that interesting as well. Even if they went 0-16, he did enough last year, and he's the quarterback whisperer that they just committed all that money to Jay Cutler. Why would you ever move on from the quarterback whisperer?
Well, I suppose now someone's got to be the X most likely. I don't see any chance whatsoever of Mark Trestman being fired. There's no chance whatsoever.
The last one's Mike Tomlin. That's another blasphemy one. Why would you even entertain the idea of getting rid of Mike Tomlin? He's a great coach.
He's a cheater. Seriously, I love Mike Tomlin. I agree. I think it's fantastic the way the organisation is run. I love the fact that they've got more stability than anyone else in the league outside of probably the Patriots.
No, they got more stability than us. They've had like 3 coaches all time or something, haven't they? They're obsessed with that as well. They're obsessed with putting that in your face, which is why he'll never get fired.
Well, in the current era, I would say that Mike Tomlin is as secure as anyone except perhaps Belichick, but it's the only way I could see him getting fired is if there was a repeat of the controversy from last year and he wasn't able to explain it away this time.
You think I'm gonna have to rewatch that tonight. When you think back to it, it was so crazy. Guy sat on the field.
Blatant is the word I would use.
Oh, nothing happened to him as well. That's crazy. That really is wild. So we think, to recap, Garrett, Allen, Philbin. Do you think Marone's going?
Doug Marrone?
Doug Marrone, yeah.
I'm 50-50. I think it's likely that he's gone.
Okay, so I think Garrett, Allen, Philbin, and Rivera are the 4 that'll go. And Coughlin's going to walk. So that's 5 openings. That's a good number of jobs.
Yep, absolutely. What was it? We had 4 this year?
I believe so.
Yeah, I would take another 5 next year. See what happens.
Most desirable is the Panthers, and most desirable we want to see in a head coaching job is Rob Ryan.
Absolutely. No competition.
All right, man. It's been a great debut having you on the podcast. You're going to do it regularly.
Thanks very much. Hope to be back very soon.
No worries, buddy. Well, thanks to everyone for downloading. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes now that they've finally uploaded the podcast. And I hope that's where you're listening to this from. So make sure you hit subscribe, and we'll speak to you again tomorrow.